Hey everyone, and welcome. Today, we are taking a deep dive into an absolutely revolutionary explainer based on Dr. Barbara Oakley's brilliant book, A Mind for Numbers. If you've ever stared at a dense page of physics equations and felt a wave of absolute panic wash over you, well, this is going to completely change how you view your own brain. What's so incredibly inspiring about Dr. Oakley is that she wasn't some born math prodigy. Actually, she failed miserably in high school algebra. She totally thought she was just inept at anything quantitative. But in her late 20s, she decided to completely re-engineer her own brain, teaching herself math from the ground up and eventually became a prominent engineering professor. Today, we're going to learn exactly how she did it and re-engineer your learning habits right along with her.
All right, let's just dive right in. Here's the roadmap for our journey today. First, the two modes of thinking, then building neural chunks, defeating the procrastination zombie, wiring deep memory, the biology of brain power, and finally, conquering exam day.
So let's kick things off with Section 1, the two modes of thinking, the pinball machine of your mind. Before we can learn any highly complex subject, we really need to grasp that our brains basically have two entirely distinct operating systems. You got to imagine your mind is like a giant pinball machine. When you're in the focused mode, it's like the bumper pins are packed super tightly together. You have this highly concentrated attention, and the pinball just bounces rapidly between closely spaced neural connections you already know. It's fantastic for executing familiar, repetitive tasks. But the diffuse mode, that is an entirely different beast. In this mode, the bumper pins are spread incredibly far apart. This happens when you just relax your attention, like when you're taking a shower or going for a walk. The pinball travels vast distances, making these big-picture, novel associations across completely different regions of the brain.
Now you might be thinking, shouldn't I just laser focus if I want to learn difficult math? Well, relying solely on the focused mode can actually trap you in what psychologists call the Einstein effect. Because those bumpers are so close together, if your initial approach to a problem is wrong, you literally just keep bouncing off the exact same wrong pins. You get stuck in a cognitive rut. And it becomes literally impossible to find a new, novel solution without just stepping away.
So get this, the great inventor Thomas Edison actually had a genius way to break out of this exact rut. Whenever he hit an insurmountable engineering problem, he wouldn't just sit there staring at his desk. Instead, he'd hold a heavy steel ball bearing in his hand and allow himself to just drift off to sleep in an armchair. As he relaxed, his brain shifted into that wide-open diffuse mode, generating crazy creative breakthroughs. And the very second he fell fully asleep, bam! The ball crashed to the floor, woke him up, and he'd instantly capture those brilliant diffuse insights before they vanished. Salvador Dali famously did the exact same thing, but with a heavy key.
Moving on to Section 2, Building Neural Chunks, Assembling Your Cognitive Library.
Think back to when you first learned to drive a car. Every single tiny action, checking the mirror, pressing the brake, turning the wheel, was agonizingly overwhelming, right? But eventually, all those separate actions fused together into one seamless cognitive chunk. Well, learning a complex physics equation works the exact same way. But here is a massive warning for you focused learners out there. The process of building these chunks is constantly derailed by the illusion of competence. This is that false, sneaky belief that you've mastered a concept just because you're reading a nicely highlighted textbook or nodding along to a worked-out solution manual. Looking at an answer key is just an external cognitive crutch. It feels exactly like learning, but it's a dangerous trap that completely crumbles the second you face a blank exam paper.
So how do we actually build a permanent chunk that your brain can rely on? You've got to follow these 3 steps. First, focus your undivided attention. Shut off your phone, close the tabs, and weave those initial neural threads. Second, actually understand the underlying concept. Memorizing a chunk without understanding it is practically useless. And third, gain context. You have to practice it enough to know exactly when, and honestly, just as importantly, when not to use it. That gives your diffuse mode a powerful, reliable tool to instantly access later on.
All right, Section 3, Defeating the Procrastination Zombie, the Biology of Avoidance.
We have to talk about the absolute biggest hurdle to deep learning. Let me ask you this. Why does sitting down to study complex calculus, or really any dense subject, sometimes actually physically hurt? If you've ever felt that tight dread in your chest right before opening a textbook, trust me, you are not alone. Here is the crazy neuroscience behind that dread. When you anticipate hard work, your brain's insular cortex literally lights up. It registers physical pain. To escape it, your brain plays a dirty trick on you and gets you to check social media for a quick, soothing dopamine hit. But brain imaging proves that the pain is entirely an illusion of anticipation. Just 20 minutes after you actually sit down and start the work, that neurological discomfort completely vanishes.
So, how do we finally defeat this zombie habit? We use the Pomodoro technique, but the secret here is focusing entirely on the process rather than the product. Don't tell yourself you have to finish 20 agonizing math problems. Just eliminate distractions, set a timer for 25 minutes, and give calm, steady effort to the process of studying. And when that timer rings, you must give yourself a 3 to 5 minute guilt-free reward. Go grab a snack, listen to a song, whatever. You earned it. That tiny dopamine reward is crucial because it actually rewires your brain to look forward to studying.
Let's jump to Section 4, Wiring Deep Memory, Leveraging Evolutionary Hardware.
If you're going to master technical jargon and complex equations, you simply can't just rely on rote repetition. Our human brains didn't evolve to memorize abstract printed numbers. They evolved to remember physical, spatial maps and vivid sensory imagery so our ancestors could survive. We need to hack that evolutionary hardware using two highly visual techniques. First is the memory palace. This involves mentally walking through a highly familiar physical space, like your own house, and placing bizarre, ridiculous visual representations of formulas on your furniture. Second is visual metaphors. Say you're learning about a cell membrane in biology. Visualize it as a strict nightclub bouncer turning away unwanted molecules. These techniques are amazing because they allow your diffuse mode to anchor complex technical knowledge directly into the massive pre-existing spatial web of your long-term memory.
The crucial takeaway here is that you cannot just read and highlight. To absolutely destroy those illusions of competence we talked about earlier, you must use active retrieval practice. You literally have to close the book, look away, and force yourself to pull the concept out of your own brain onto a blank piece of paper. Even better, use the find 'em technique. Try teaching the concept out loud as if you were explaining it to a 10-year-old. If you stumble or use a bunch of confusing jargon while explaining it to that imaginary 10-year-old, boom, you've just found a gap in your knowledge. Next up, Section 5, the biology of brain power. Eat, sleep, and exercise.
We can't forget that your brain is a physical, biological organ. You absolutely cannot build an elite cognitive engine if you neglect the basic physical maintenance of your hardware. Okay, get ready for a staggering number, 60%. When you fall into deep sleep, your brain cells physically shrink by up to 60%. Why on earth would they do that? Because while you're awake, metabolic waste builds up between your neurons like a literal mental toxin. Shrinking allows your cerebrospinal fluid to rush in and wash all that toxic waste away. Pulling an all-nighter is like pouring sugar straight into the gas tank of a sports car. Sleep is the precise time when your diffuse mode permanently consolidates everything you've learned that day.
And right alongside sleep is exercise. Physical exercise stimulates brain-derived neurotrophic factor, or BDNF. Think of it as a super powerful fertilizer for your neurons. If you are incredibly stuck on a problem, stepping away for a 20-minute run is not a distraction. It flushes your brain with oxygen, builds massive neuroplasticity, and crucially, it gives your diffuse mode the background space it desperately needs to solve the problem for you.
And finally, we arrive at Section 6, Conquering Exam Day, the ultimate test.
This is the culmination of your entire learning journey. It's so tragic, but so many brilliant students do all the hard work and then completely derail on test day because of anxiety and cognitive paralysis. But because of everything we've covered, we can now use a totally counterintuitive strategy for exams, the hard start, jump to easy method. Traditional advice always says start with the easy questions to build confidence, right? Wrong. Scan the test, find the absolute hardest problem, and work on it for 2 to 3 minutes. The very second you get stuck, force yourself to stop and jump over to an easy problem. Here's the magic. While your focused mind knocks out the easy answers, your diffuse mode is turning away on that hard problem in the background. When you finally return to it, that frustrating mental block will frequently have just vanished.
Now, if the sheer panic of an exam causes your working memory to just completely lock up, use this physiological hack. Deep, slow abdominal breathing physically activates your vagus nerve. This instantly triggers your parasympathetic nervous system to override your body's fight-or-flight response. It slows your heart rate down and literally restores a logical function to your prefrontal cortex so you can think clearly again.
Which brings us to our conclusion, the rules of deep learning. Over the last 10 minutes, we've broken down exactly how to transform yourself into a master of highly complex technical fields.
Let's rapid-fire these rules so you can lock them into your brain right now. You must use active recall. Aggressively test yourself, no peeking. Chunk your problems so they become automatic. Space your repetition out over multiple days, don't cram. Alternate your problem-solving techniques so you know exactly when to apply them. Take regular breaks to unleash the power of your diffuse mode, crush that procrastination zombie with process-oriented Pomodoros, and eat your hardest frogs first, meaning tackle your toughest subjects early when your focused energy is at its absolute peak.
Remember, intelligence is not some fixed, rigid trait you were just born with. Your brain is a dynamic, highly adaptable neuroplastic muscle. Now that you have these highly visual, science-backed strategies to learn absolutely anything, it's time to completely discard the belief that you aren't a numbers person. Embrace the struggle, because that frustration is the literal feeling of your neural connections growing stronger. So, I'll leave you with this one question. What complex, seemingly impossible subject will you choose to conquer next? Thank you so much for learning with us today. Keep challenging your mind, and we'll see you in the next explainer.